Soaring demand for electricity has sparked renewed interest in nuclear energy. Critical to that is uranium, a reliable domestic source of uranium. Today, we're going to learn about uranium, and we're going to learn about a company, Homeland Uranium, that has a huge deposit of uranium in the ground in the United States. We're going to do all that with Roger Lemaitre. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, sir. He's the CEO of Homeland Uranium. Roger, welcome. And on behalf of our viewer, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today.
I appreciate you having us on. I'm excited to tell you what we know about the uranium space and about Homeland.
Yeah, so I follow the metal space closely. Seems like every day I'm seeing these articles like there's not enough electricity to go around for the AI revolution, and now it feels like nuclear energy is emerging as the solution to that. Does that you're the expert in this? Is that a real factor? And as you look out over 10, 20 years, how do you see things changing within the uranium space?
Oh, the AI angle is definitely an important factor. I don't think it was necessary to get things moving along in this path that we're on now, but it certainly was. It's an accelerant for sure to the bonfire that's taking place around the excitement in uranium. We see a situation over the last decade where electricity demand. There's been real growth happening in the uranium space in terms of demand from new builds, mostly not in the OEDC countries, not in North America. And over the last 5 or 6 years, it's changed pretty radically. And a lot of it has to do with secure baseload electricity, which is where nuclear shines. There you have your renewables, you have your coal, you have your gas. Hydro is limited in terms of what it can do to grow, because there's less spaces to build new hydro in the world. So secure baseload electricity is really important. For some, the clean air energy portion of that is extremely important as well, because nuclear does provide it's one of the lowest, if not the lowest, carbon emission source you can get per kilowatt hour total life cycle. And with the need for with the AI sort of adding things and helping move the newest technologies along for new build things like small modular reactors, it's really changed Western and particularly North American, Canadian, but mostly American need for uranium to power it to beyond, I think, what anyone would have thought about even 5 years ago.
When you say base load, when you refer to that, you mean just like a steady supply? Because I know solar obviously depends on the sun, wind depends on the wind blowing, and like you said, hydroelectric, well, you need to have a river or some source of water. But with nuclear, you can pretty much provide a real steady supply of electricity. Is that an accurate way to explain what you said?
Absolutely. I think for electricity experts, baseload is that minimum power you need to power everything out there in the grid at its lowest point. So we're going to need that no matter what. And then the power demand can go up or down if it's hot or cold. People come home from work, turn on electricity, turn on their ovens, power spikes. And renewables are fantastic for those spikes. But baseload electricity, everyone wants to be able to turn their light switch on and know it's going to turn on. And if you're an AI data center, you want to know no matter what happens, you're going to power that center up and keep it powered. And I think that's one of the drivers for sure in the AI angle.
Okay. So when we focus in strictly on uranium, you've been working in the uranium field for over 20 years, as I understand.
25 years or more, yeah.
Okay.
Been a long time.
You've experienced, I guess you could say, every angle from the uranium market. Do we have right now in the United States, let's say, sufficient uranium to supply what the future energy demand profile looks like?
Oh, not even close.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna say even ramping things up, it's still a long way away from being self-sufficient. That is absolutely, undoubtedly not going to happen anytime in the next decade. And so there's going to be a real need to grow new mines in the United States. Before the cycle started to move here 2 years ago, the United States produced less than 2% of its needs domestically.
Wow.
Less than 2%. We're seeing old mines being restarted, new companies starting things up. And, I don't believe that's going to change things substantially. It's important. And if you got to 10%, to somewhere between 10 and 20% is sort of where things will be forecast to go. You're still really reliant on foreign sources. And currently, or in the last couple of years, or the last couple of decades, over 50% of uranium needed to power American homes and businesses through nuclear power has been focused on Russia, Kazakhstan, Niger, and Uzbekistan. So they're not always the most friendly countries for Western interests, particularly American interests.
Yes, and if things were to change geopolitically, it's kind of a scary thought that we could run out of the fuel essentially that we need to power our nuclear plants. When I look at the price of uranium, it does feel like about 2 years ago it really started to increase. And that was, kind of before there was this focus on securing domestic sources in the United States. Now, you, with your company, Homeland Uranium, that was earlier this year that the company was launched. Is that correct?
We became a publicly floating company in March.
Okay.
We had a predecessor company that helped put all this together that started in April of 2024. Okay. I came in somewhere in the middle. To join us up. The opportunity was presented to me, and I was asked to help find a home for these assets. I was being a big time, long-term player in the uranium space. I read in all over the world, working with groups like Cameco and running companies like UEX, excuse me. I have a pretty good sense of what's good, bad, and ugly in the space.
Okay.
And when the opportunities were presented to me, I kind of went, oh, I don't believe this. I can't believe it's real because I've never heard of it. It would have been something I would have thought. But they were found back in 1979, right at the time 3 Mile Island happened, and the entire uranium industry in the U.S. and nuclear industry, for that matter, collapsed for the most part, other than producing power plants. So they were completely forgotten about. And I'll give credit to the vendors that found it, brought it to me, and I was able to help put it together with these other people, and they asked me to stay on because of my experience. But I do believe that what we have is we're in a former producing area of northern Colorado that produced uranium from the 50s to the 80s that has a meaningful size potential from the discoveries that were made by previous operators. And it means that we have the potential, if we can convert things over, to turn things into a meaningful producer in the United States.
Okay. So these projects were presented to you. They're in the United States. They're in the Colorado Plateau. Is that correct?
Very north end of the Colorado Plateau, yeah.
Which is not just in Colorado. It's kind of a zone that when I looked at a map, it's like 4 areas. But these projects that you acquired, as I understand it, there were millions and millions of dollars spent maybe back in the 70s exploring and determining that there was uranium in the ground. But then 3 Mile Island happened, and suddenly nobody wanted anything to do with nuclear or uranium. It was kind of like a nuclear winter period that went on. And now that we're kind of coming into this new era of acceptance and realization that nuclear is a really good option to provide, these projects are looking, I would say, especially since they're in the United States, very attractive.
They are from our point of view. That's why we acquired them, and we're trying to move them forward so that they can actually be a producer. I think there are certainly higher grade deposits in the world outside of the United States, like we see in northern Canada in this Athabasca Basin. But with those things come unique challenges as well. We do see the need for geopolitical certainty in the United States for their uranium sources for nuclear power, especially. The presidents came out in May and said, yeah, we want to quadruple output of your nuclear power by 2050. Well, whether that can happen or not, I don't know. Even if it went up 25% from where we are today, that is a very challenging proposition for the domestic industry. And it means there's going to be a lot more need to move projects forward. Ours, we're looking to move those forward in a relatively quick period of time compared to, say, other jurisdictions in the world that are in the uranium game.
Okay. So Homeland Uranium fits, and correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere between being an exploration company and a development stage company, because obviously there was a lot of money, a lot of work put into exploring in the past. Kind of explain that to me and to the viewer, how you see where the company's positioned and maybe how things might change in the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. So typically, if you were looking at a junior uranium or any commodity company, they have an idea and they go, I have an idea. Let's look here. And they test and hopefully they make a discovery. And then they move on and grow that discovery through additional drilling, increase its certainty that it's there in terms of what we think is there. And then they move on to engineering phase. So for us, we're coming in after someone's already done that first little bit of work.
Right.
Now, it probably doesn't meet the standard today that we would expect to see, whether you're using the 43101 Canadian versions of the rules or the HLUCF or the SAMREC version. And it's going to require us to do a little bit more work to prove them up to today's standards. They were definitely a little looser, but what we do know is basically it's not shooting fish in a barrel, but we at least know there's a bunch of barrels in an area and we know that there's fish in some of them somewhere and we have to go chase it down where they are.
I want to interject because I think this is an important point. It's not like you're sitting on this interview with me saying, well, we think there's some uranium there. We're going to go out and drill and find it. You pretty much know for sure, obviously, there's uranium there. So you've already cleared what I think a lot of junior mining investors would consider to be the riskiest phase, right? That you're not just hoping that not that you would be hoping anyway, or any explorer is, but it's already there. You know that. Now it's a matter of maybe making the resource more solid through additional work, additional drilling, and then moving further down the development phase from there.
That is exactly correct. Okay. So yes, there is still obviously a little bit of risk when we do the infill drilling, and things may not be exactly the way we see there, and that's pretty normal. There'll be good surprises and bad surprises, and they generally even out.
Okay.
But we're not sitting here going, oh man, let's got our fingers crossed this hole is going to be the one that sets us off on a new discovery. That's high risk for sure for investors, because you're doing the best science you can, but you don't know whether it's there. Ours is how much is there, and can it be exploited? And our goal over the next 12 months will be, can we exploit it potentially in an economic way?
Okay. I'm going to pull up a slide from your investor deck and see if you can give us some commentary on this. Make sure I get it up here. There it is there. Explain to me what this means when someone's looking at Homeland Uranium.
Okay, so on the left-hand side are your U.S.-focused uranium companies, the producers there on the top half, and your explorers and developers that are akin to us on the bottom half of that slide. And what it shows is how many pounds of uranium they have in resources. Our peer companies in the explorer developer case, they're all looking at historical resources like us as well, with a few that have converted them over into maybe current standard. But the vast majority of those resources are very similar to where we are today. So we have a significant resource base compared to a lot of those, and even compared to some of the producers. But on the right-hand side of this page, you do the market cap per pound, and this is in Canadian dollars, so I apologize, but it's the same if I turn it into American dollars in terms of relativeness. Our producers are obviously highly valued, and rightfully so, because they're going to be able to take advantage of today's higher uranium prices. But our peer companies that are not producing, but are in the same situation that we're in, are also trading at a significant premium to where we trade on a market cap per pound of resource in the ground. And part of that is we're new. People are starting to find out about our story. But I think what it allows investors who decide they want to get in the space today is, something reasonable. If we are able to do what we say we're going to do, we should easily re-rate to these companies. And in fact, we'd be further ahead down the development pathline than those companies. So I think there's a real opportunity. I mean, I'm obviously biased because I believe in Homeland and I believe in our assets. But from an investor point of view, just pure analytically, you look at that, go, why are they trading at 2, 3, 4 times our value?
Yep. So when I look at this chart, and I circled Homeland in red on the bottom for the viewer, it looks like, so Homeland, based upon the resource that had been kind of previously drilled, roughly the number of pounds of uranium you have, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you're valued at about 62 cents, or your value reflects uranium at about 62 cents per pound. on your
Yeah,
balance?
our total company's value is valued at all the pounds multiplied by 62.
Okay. Okay.
And so that would give you our market cap
And
in
all
Canadian
your
dollars. Yeah.
and all your peers, I'll circle this as well. The explorers and developers are valued at much higher valuations. And I do think, I think you said this, but I think part of that has to do with the fact that you're a newer company to the market, and couple that with the fact that you can kind of prove things out with good news flow in the coming year or so. Is there any drilling going on right now? Anything you can tell us about in that regard?
Yeah, we started our drill program at Coyote Basin property, one of the two that have the resources on it, just a couple of weeks ago. So
Okay.
we're just starting to get that thing rolling. We have the usual challenges we get up starting up a new program. The first few holes always take a little bit longer till everyone gets perfectly tuned into how they have to do things and how it needs to be drilled. So we should be putting out news pretty much on an every 2-week basis based on the results as we go forward. One of the great things about being in the uranium space is you can run a detector down the hole after it's drilled and find out whether there's uranium in it from the radioactivity. And you can actually calibrate those back to actual equivalent to assay grades. And then you obviously do the assays to prove up that that's right. But the technology's been around since the mid 1970s. So it's extremely well.
It's been tested.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that, because I'm real familiar with gold and silver drilling, but with uranium, you can drill the core hole, go down, then take the core out to send it off to get assayed. But then there's some type of device you can slowly lower down, and wow, interesting.
Yeah. So you get to what you'll see in a lot of companies, and they'll report it. They'll call it EU308. That's a radiometric equivalent. They call it. It's always good to prove them up with resources, but with assays. But the producers, and when I was at Cameco back in the US, they never actually did assays because they were so accurate with their probing results.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. What about the financials of the company, stock ownership, inside ownership? Can you give me a rundown in terms of cash position and maybe again, like how much of the stock's owned by insiders?
And so 18.5% of the stock is owned by insiders.
Wow.
And that would be the group that brought in the original shell company that put things together, plus our board and management team. Most of that stock, about 2/3 of it's held in a 3-year escrow, of which we 6 months down that path, and every 6 months there'll be some shares released. Their last were in October.
Okay.
15% of them are held by the company that we vended the one asset from, the Coyote Basin asset from. So roughly both, and they're also in the same escrow. So roughly half the stock is very, very tightly held. The rest of it, we have Rick Rule as one of our major shareholders, and for about 4 million shares. Sachem Cove Resources, one of the big uranium funds, there's never a huge uranium fund, but they're one of the biggest uranium fund players in the space, is in the stock as well. And sorry, I've lost my train of thought about where I was going to go. We have about $9.5 million cash in the bank right now from our financing we did. Our current program is about 30 of the part 1 of the phase 2 program is 35 holes, 17,000 feet for about 5.5 million Canadian or 4 million American. So we're well financed to go through this program and well into the next one as well.
Okay. And I want to draw attention on the fact that you mentioned Rick Rule is one of your larger shareholders. He's very selective in terms of the companies. I follow Rick Rule and listen to what he says and try to get hints when he talks about certain companies that he invests in, because he just doesn't do a spray approach. He's very selective in terms of the companies that he invests in. So that's great news to hear. You talked about Coyote Basin, but there's another project again within that Colorado Plateau. Is it the Redwash and Skull Creek? Is that correct?
Yes. We're just in the process of rechristening that because they're two properties that bound against each other. We're going to call it Crossbones. And for one reason is that if anyone were to go out there and Google Skull Creek uranium deposit in Colorado, they're going to see this really exciting deposit that was found about 2 miles north of us, where they mined 1.5 pounds of uranium back in 1953 or 56. That's not what we bought. That's not what we bought. So we're calling it Crossbones. It was a discovery made by Uranga Shell Shaft, which is one of the larger producers, also in 79. It also went through the same sort of issues related to what's happened back in the 3 Mile Island era. And it was something we were hoping to get when we first formed the company, but it wasn't available, and it came available to us. We picked it up a couple of months ago. And it's the same scenario that we have at Coyote Basin, almost exactly. They're 25 miles apart. So as an operator, if both were to go forward, it's probably out of a common facility, which would obviously save a lot of capital. And it's probably 6 to 8 months behind the timeline that we have at Coyote Basin, although we have a lot more information in the past that we could probably use that we can't use as much of at Coyote Basin. So for all the things we're planning to do, and the goal here for Coyote Basin will be to get to an inferred resource by the middle of next year, do some metallurgical work along the way over the next 6 months, and decide whether our heap leach idea will work. And then go, if we're all things lining up, we'll go to an inferred resource or an indicated resource, and then it's engineering studies in the end of 2027.
Okay.
Coyote, or the Skull Creek Crossbones deposit is sort of 6 months behind on the same sort of track. Okay. Their milestones will be 6 months behind. So we're looking at drilling there in the spring with a resource by the end of next year. Unindicated level, the same idea. Is it the engineering things working out the way we expect? Do we increase the certainty by infill drilling and then looking at engineering studies?
Okay. What about infrastructure and access to the deposits? I know that can be in any mining scenario. If it's super remote, it can be more challenging to get electricity there, to get people there, to deal with weather, that type of thing. How would you say your projects stack up against, kind of the other uranium projects that are out there in the world?
I couldn't almost tailor order infrastructure to be better.
Okay.
It's we literally have a major power line running across the north end of both properties.
Oh, wow.
With a power plant that's literally 10 miles to the west of our Red Wash project on the Utah side of the border, because we're right up against the Utah border. But so that's really good. We have two not interstate, but two major Colorado highways that bound the north and south ends of the property. And there's an extensive road network that gets you to anywhere. And I tell people I could drive to any corner of the property in a pickup truck.
Wow.
We have the area has been an active oil and gas area for the last 80 years, the Rangeley Field. And there is around our property oil production at small scale going on right now. And there's a network of roads that have serviced that cross all over the properties. So yes, I could argue that you couldn't ask for too much better.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. You obviously have some extensive experience in the uranium industry. I want to touch on that again, because after listening to you talk about what's going on with uranium and talk about what's going on with Homeland, I feel like this is a very interesting company, a very interesting scenario. You didn't get into this lightly, right? You told me you've spent 25 years. You worked for some of the bigger uranium companies. Obviously, when you looked at this opportunity, there were some, I guess, compelling factors that drew you to it. And you probably have covered these already, but would you mind sharing with us what those were?
Well, sure. I absolutely wanted to be in the United States with our project, because when you're producing less than 2% of your need, you see I would love to say we took credit for foreseeing all that was going to happen in 2025.
Yeah.
That would be great to say, but obviously that's not the case. We wouldn't have expected the administration to come out so positively and really push the nuclear industry forward like they have. Yeah. But you could already see it changing. You can see the SMR things changing. But two things were really important for us. One was exposure to the American market, because there's a dire need for more domestic supply. And even more so since things have been scaled up by the president in May. But we also wanted to be a resource bearing company. And I think the last cycle that ran from 2005 to 2008, where the uranium prices spiked up like they are now, was a difficult one for investors, because there hadn't been a space in the junior sector since the 1970s. And it was really hard for investors to say what the difference was between somebody and somebody else. And I'd say that you could put there was a company I know that put the word something, they changed their name from something to something uranium, and raised $30 million US, right, moving the company forward, and they had grassroots projects because investors didn't know better. This time around, investors are very much more aware of the quality versus those companies that have resources and are on a track to production, and those that are hoping to find something. And there's a huge valuation gap between them for investors, and there's a huge challenge raising money for those grassroots companies, even in robust markets. So we wanted to have exposure to resources. And when this project came along, it ticked both boxes. Resource-bearing company in the U.S. And with my experience, a lot of people are saying, hey, why don't you work in the Athabasca Basin, and because it's where the high-grade uranium deposits are found. And that's true. It takes a long time to bring those to production. And the U.S. Permitting process has changed quite a bit over the last 5 years, and especially in 2025. And you're no longer on the decades track to get things to the finish line.
And Homeland Uranium has a head start, right? I mean, we talked about that several times, but you have a head start with big projects with uranium in the ground in the United States. And as an extra added bonus, there's power lines running through the northern edge of both projects. So what else could we ask for? I want to show the viewer the website if they want to learn more, and then ask you if there's anything that any final words or anything I forgot to ask you about. This is the Homeland Uranium website where you can learn more, homeland-uranium.com, traded on the TSXV with symbol HLU, and on the OTC in the United States, HLUCF. And you can go out here if you want to look at the investor deck that we referred to earlier. Just go to investors and go down to corporate presentation, and it's easy to download as well. Oops, get us both back on the screen. Don't want to get rid of Roger. And I guess I have one more question for you. Is that a cat that I heard in the background?
Yeah, somehow she got in the room here. I don't know how.
Yeah, I deal with the same thing, so I understand. And I was going to ask you, I just want to make sure the cat's name is Uranium, correct?
Oh, no, definitely not.
Okay.
It's Gracie, but she's a vocal one.
Yeah, she is. Is there anything I forgot to ask you, Roger, that we need to cover?
A little bit about maybe our team.
Sure.
I have a long background in this space. For 25 years, I did a little less than half of that with Cameco in various ways. And I was actually on the mergers and acquisitions team during the last cycle. I managed their global portfolio before I was asked to leave. And then a lot of time managing post-Fukushima era, a significant company called UEX. But it's our CVP exploration. She's phenomenal. She's found things in multiple jurisdictions and has got a real nose for uranium. But our board and management and advisory team I was shocked when they were willing to join our company, because they're much bigger players in the space than you would get for a company that's a startup phase like we were a year ago. And so you'd think these would be companies that would be sort of $500 million company type board that we have with us. They're very knowledgeable in the capital market space. They're very knowledgeable about opportunities. They understand how to move companies forward in terms of getting exposure, and people hear our voice, and their technical expertise is excellent. So it's not something you'd normally see in a company our size.
Kind of a unique factor, a who's who of the uranium world. That's obviously very, very good news. So, well, Roger, I want to say thank you on behalf of myself. What's that?
Oh, sorry. And we got excellent backing with SCP Resource Finance, legend in the
awesome. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like as I was kind of going through the investor deck and reading and researching your company, that you do have this somewhat of a who's who of the uranium world that are involved with the company on a board level and advisory level as well.
Yeah, I think so.
And that makes a difference.
It does. It absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. I learned about uranium, and I'm excited about Homeland Uranium. It'll be fun to watch, see how the company progresses here in the coming 6 months, year, 2 years out. I think there's bright prospects ahead.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We believe so too. And so do the shareholders who got into our stock when we started the company out.
Yep. All right, sir. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.